Good afternoon and welcome to the August Ordinary Council meeting. Item 1, welcome to country. Unfortunately, Councillor Greg James is an apology. Item 2, acknowledgement. We, Greater Shepparton City Council, acknowledge the Yorta Yorta peoples of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay our respect to their tribal elders. We celebrate their continuing culture. We acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Item 3, privacy notice. This meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It's also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Item 4, governance principles. Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9.2 of the Local Government Act 2020. These principles are as followed, and councillors, they're listed 1 to 9 on page 6 of the agenda. Item 5, apologies. Councillors, do we have any apologies this afternoon? Councillor Brooksby.
Thank you, Mayor Saley. I'd like to put in an apology for Councillor Greg James.
Thank you. Can I have someone second that? Councillor Dobson.
That motion.
All in favour? Motion carried. Item 6, declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts this afternoon, councillors? No. Very good. Item 7, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any minutes of the previous meeting opposed? No. Can I please have a councillor move them? Councillor Adam.
I'll move the minutes of the 80th of July 2023 council meeting as circulated be confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Can I second that?
I'll second that motion. Mayor Saley.
All in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Item 8, public question time. Under item 8.1, we do have a public question, and I'll hand over to our CEO, Peter Harriott, to read out the question and the answer.
Thank you. We have a question from Fran Smullen, Barbara Gray and Megan Walker, and Fran, Barb and Megan are in the audience tonight, so welcome. The question is Greater Shepparton City Council going to publicly support the yes case for the referendum on an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to the Parliament and constitutional amendment to be held later this year? If yes, will the Council both promote their support of the referendum and take actions to counterbalance correct misinformation and disinformation circulating in communities? So, ladies, the answer to that question is that Council will consider its support for an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament at tonight's Council meeting. And this action is consistent with the Council plan, the current Council plan, priority of calling for substantive First Nations constitutional change and structural reform. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Item 9, applications and petitions, nil received. Councillors, we now go to page 8 of the agenda, item 10.1, which is the LGBTIQA+ Advisory Committee, terms of reference and membership recruitment. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you. I move that the Council adopt the terms of reference for the Greater Shepparton LGBTIQA+ Advisory Committee as attached.
Thank you, Councillor Spinks. Can I have a councillor second that, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. 2 years on from the committee's commencement, it is now time to recruit new committee members to appoint through council resolution for a new 2-year term. In anticipation of a new membership drive, the terms of reference have been reviewed and several changes have been made incorporating current committee feedback, governance advice and sector best practice into the new terms of reference. These changes include changes to the membership composition to strengthen community engagement and representation, greater clarity of processes and expectations for membership recruitment, and the establishment of a process for the appointment of co-opted members and subcommittees. This committee has naturally developed over the last 2 years, and I want to take a moment to thank the members of the past 2 years that have participated, contributed and built the foundation of this committee. The LGBTQIA+ Advisory Committee provides an avenue for greater engagement between Council and the LGBTIQA+ community members, strengthening Council's commitment in creating an inclusive environment for marginalised members of our community where their voice is valued and heard. We live in a world that was actively designed to exclude, and it is now our responsibility to undo that work. And the best way to do that is to create the space and directly hear from those with lived experience, which is exactly what this committee does. I'm excited to see this renewed phase of the committee moving forward, and I encourage all LGBTQIA+ identifying and ally community members to apply when the membership drive opens shortly. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, councillor Spinks. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. As we know, the LGBTIQA+ community is very dynamic and it's a rapidly changing space. So the original purpose of the committee is to assist council to stay abreast of LGBTIQA+ issues and to ensure that an equitable and diverse lens is applied to policies, procedures and possibly even projects. So my understanding is the committee's been busy outlining their goals and aligning to the organisational Rainbow Roadmap. They've got a ton of expertise behind them and they've already achieved a ton of work. The best example I can think of is flying the rainbow flag semi-permanently at Queen's Gardens. It wasn't long ago when laws and social standards forced LGBTIQA people to hide who they are, and now it's a much safer world, one that celebrates love in all its shapes and forms. So I congratulate the committee and wish them luck on all their future endeavours.
Thank you, councillor Summer. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? No? Any closing comments, councillor Spinks?
No, thank you.
Good. Councillors, we will now go to vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 12 of the agenda, item 10.2, Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Advisory Committee, terms of reference, the recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'd like to move the motion that the council adopt the terms of reference for the Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Advisory Committee as attached.
Thank you, councillor Adam. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Abdullah.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, this committee was back in 2010, I think 2011 it was formed. Not soon after, or not too long after it was formed, actually, I was actually the first charter champion of that committee back in 2015, I think. And that opened my eyes to a lot of different issues and problems that half of our community face. So I was pleased to be on that committee then. I'm now back on as a replacement, or not a replacement, but as a, I was going to say substitute, but probably not a very good substitute for Councillor Spinks. I've only had 2 meetings at the last 2 or 3 months. However, both were, one was cancelled because of the lack of actual attendees, and the second one, we didn't have a quorum. So these terms of reference are trying to address that issue by making it easier and more accessible to more women to be on that committee. Not many major changes. We went from 10 to 12, I think, a maximum of 12. I think we only had 9 or 10 previously. And I think it's probably, by definition, the women that usually get on these committees are independent, mobile, progressive and successful women as well. So it's pretty hard, I think, for them always to find the time during the day, especially to commit to these types of meetings. So broadening the catchment of this type of person, I think, is hopefully going to answer our problems or address our issues with getting a quorum. That being said, the 3 or 4 that were at the meetings are very passionate, and I have no confidence that we will actually get a size committee of strong and powerful women.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Adam. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you very briefly. As former community representative on this committee and then a councillor representative on this committee, I fully endorse all the work that the committee has been undertaking and also the updated terms of reference. Over the years, a lot of development has taken place, but there's a lot of work is still to be done when it comes to gender equality and all the principles that this committee is focused on, or the guiding principles, which include gender equity, active citizenship, and diversity. So this committee is working hard to ensure that women in our community, they get the opportunity to develop their leadership experience, and get the visibility at all the leadership levels, and also empower women. As the report highlights, some of the achievements of this committee include leading and delivering the Greater Shepparton Women's Charter International Women's Day event, which the committee has been organizing consistently over the past many years. And it's one of the signature events of the Charter. And, but more importantly, it is also working closely with other committees like LGBTIQA+ Advisory Committee, and also working with other community organizations such as Greater Shepparton Foundation to ensure that women are provided the support that is needed to enhance their skills, to enhance their leadership capacities. So I'm very happy to see some of the updates that the terms of reference has now incorporated. Of course, over the years, some of the developments that have taken place include that, of course, in my time, we did not have that, but now it's pleasing to see that the committee is going to involve a maximum of 3 representatives of businesses who are committed to the representation, recognition, safety, and well-being of people who identify as women. And also it is, the committee is also going to have representation from non-profit organizations. So it's really good to have, in addition to individual community members, we have representations from local community organizations and local businesses who are, focused on gender equity and who want to promote gender equity. So all in all, it's good to see these updates, and it's important to have those terms of reference updated as we go along too. Yeah. So happy to endorse that.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? No. Any closing comments, Councillor Adam?
No, thank you.
Very good. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried on opposed. Councillors, we now go to page 16 of the agenda, item 10.3, Empowering Communities Project Grants and Update. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor forward as a motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor Saleh. I'll move that the council note the successful applicants awarded funding under delegated authority for the Empowering Community Projects grants as follows. If you like, I'd like to read them out because each one of these are important.
No problem.
Gives a Break Limited, who I know a little bit about, 80,000. Goulburn Valley Gangaroo Parasports, 100. Greater Shepparton Lighthouse Project, 100,000. International Association for Psychiatric Nurses, 40,000. The Masomo Mabel Foundation, if I've pronounced that right, 100,000. MEAC over Marupna, 40,000. Secure Shep Kids, 20,000. The Umaja Empowerment Group, 20,000. A total of $500,000.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Can I have a councillor second that motion, please? Councillor Latson. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
This is a wonderful project we're putting through council at the moment. It's a Victorian government funded project of 500,000. There's a couple of these in particular that I've had something to do with. The Gives a Break people, they take kids from all over the municipality that just quite aren't there at the moment, and they take them out in the bush and they show them what life is about in comparison to perhaps what they've got at home. So Gives a Break is a great organisation, and it's for young people. The Greater Shepparton Lighthouse Project, $100,000 in particular. This is a project that got off the ground, I'd say about 6 years ago, it has just grown and grown now, and it's got many arms to it, and the Lighthouse Project is providing many avenues of support to our community. MEAC, the Marupna Education Activity Centre, 40,000. Jan Phillips runs that over there, and that's, again, I've had some personal stuff, some feedback. It is a home away from home, so it is, once again, well worth the effort. They're the ones that I know, so I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson, for speaking to the motion. Councillor Latson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Chantal. Yeah, I'd like to thank the state government for this initiative. And we had 8 applicants that provided their submission, and they were all awarded. So it's fantastic to see the groups that are on the list.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Latson. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sully. Just briefly, I'll sum up certainly what Councillor Dobson and Councillor Latson said, that this is a Victorian government funded project. of the 8 organisations, most appear to be locally based, which is very, very good to see as well. And they're providing tangible activities that they've put forward to lift the community, specifically for the under 24-year-olds. And these include English classes, these include 4-wheel drive camps for those for justice, diversion recipients, disability programs, mental health, first aid training. And I think I'd like to thank the Victorian Government to put such money towards that project, which is $500,000.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. There were actually 18 submissions. 10 were invited to submit the full application and 8 were successful. And I can't love most of them anymore. They're just fantastic, especially the mental health first aid training, which is going to have some wonderful flow and effect. I'll just read this out here. It says, access to education, employment and sustainable housing, have strong physical and emotional well-being, and being connected to family and culture ensures a better chance of doing well in life. So this is all upstream prevention. It's focused on young people so that they become the best people that they can be. And that is the sort of public health initiatives that all councils and all governments should get behind, because that is going to build our country moving forward in the next generations.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Summer. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Adam.
Thanks, Mayor Sally. I just want to add to the commentary that that's a lot of money, $500,000. And some of these groups are getting $100,000 each, which no doubt it'll be well spent. But I'm happy to see that there is quite a robust acquittal process attached to this, which I think should be mentioned. All applicants have till 30th of June 2024 to supply all the necessary documentation and photographs and all sorts of things to prove that this money was well spent, which I'm sure it will be. So that just gives me more confidence in the whole program. And if they do not meet the acquittal requirements, they won't be able to apply in the following rounds.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Adam. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Yes, Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you. I just want to add to this commentary. First of all, yes, it's wonderful to see so many applications considered, and there was this very robust process for review of these projects, and finally the projects have been these projects have been recommended, which we are today considering. They are all amazing projects, and they touch on so many important aspects, as everybody has noted. So many important aspects, especially when it comes to our youth. And we are seeing, the projects talking about employment, sports, town pride, mental health, refugees, all those areas are covered. My only thought or concern is that once the projects are delivered, what is the continuity? How do we assure that some of these programs are ongoing? Because consistency and continuity of these programs is very important. So while I thank the state government for allocating $500,000, but I also hope to see that these projects, if successful, and I'm sure most of them will be successful, are carried out on an ongoing basis, because it's not enough, it's not good enough to start something and do it and then stop. I mean, we are talking about mental health, we're talking about community pride, we're talking about employment. All these are like ongoing issues, so there should be that continuity there. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No? Any closing comments, Councillor Dobson?
Only I thank my fellow councillors for adding to this topic. I think all the comments have been very relevant.
Very good. Thank you. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 22 of the agenda, item 10.4, which is supporting an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'd like to put forward the recommendation as lined on page 22 that the council support the establishment of an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Can I have a councillor second that motion, please?
I'll second the motion.
Councillor Adam.
Keep trying to say Mr. Me, sorry.
Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. So the question here is, why are we voting on this recommendation, and why is it recommended that we support a voice to Parliament, in effect the yes vote? Many would think far be it from us, council and other organisations, or sporting bodies even, to make a stance and try to persuade a yes or a no vote. The referendum is what democracy is all about, and millions will go cast their vote, secret ballot, later this year. Again, each councillor here in this chamber will have their democratic right to vote how they see fit, based on the information that they have before them. Ultimately, we each have only just one vote, as does the rest of Australia. So why then are we collectively putting forward a recommendation? Because people from our community have asked us, as leaders in the community, to form a stance and let the public know. Now, whether that makes a difference or not, I'm not sure, but here is my rationale. Here in Greater Shepparton, we are privileged to have the largest First Nations population in Victoria outside Melbourne. And we also have one of only 2 First Nations councillors across all of Victoria. We have Councillor Greg James on council, which provides us with a unique opportunity, a valued viewpoint, and if you like, in essence, a voice to and in local government. We are all so much the richer for his considered input, but this is much bigger than Councillor James. I ask the question that if we as council do not support our First Nations councillor or First Nations people in Greater Shepparton, then who will? By not saying anything, being silent is as good as abstaining, and therefore being in the negative on the vote. It will say much about Australia should this referendum be unsuccessful, far more than if it is successful. I know that there are a good number of Indigenous people, even locally, who will probably vote no, as they are not satisfied with the detail that has been presented, or for whatever other reasons. I can honestly say that I was probably in that camp wanting more detail. I have asked and I have read up, and although I don't have all the prescribed detailed information I'd like, I am satisfied with the direction, the intent of the voice, the change to the Constitution, and what it may look like. The question that will be put to the public is a proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Do you approve this proposed alteration? Now seriously, by Australia having a First Nations voice to Parliament, what are the major consequences? Is it going to stop the federal budget from being passed? No. Is it going to not allow recognition for the rest of Australia or disrupt the democracy? No. I ask all non-Indigenous Australians, how, by passing this referendum, will it affect your day-to-day life? I seriously doubt it would, but it may just improve those who are our First Nations people. Let's look back a little bit, as one of the key issues has been in deciding whether to support the referendum or not has been the changing of the Constitution, a Constitution that has by and large served us well. It is a colonialised document, brought about correctly to establish the coming together of the states and territories of Australia to provide a legal platform for the federal government to interact on our behalf on foreign policy, immigration, trade, defence and security, both internationally and internally. And you'd have imagined First Nations would have been included, but it wasn't. In fact, we all are only too well aware, one of only a few referendums to actually get up in Australia was to recognise Aboriginal people as part of the population in 1967, with Victoria having the biggest percentage for the vote of 94.68%. It seems incredulous as to why it took so long, but in part, in 1901, when the Constitution was passed by all states signing on, there was not a treaty in place with any First Nations people, and I guess to whom would the negotiations have been? We know that there are approximately 250 First Nations languages spoken at the time, let alone how many First Nations nations there were out there, and contained within that literally hundreds of clans and thousands of family groups. Now, with a systematic colonialised land grab the world over, this method of not recognising First Nations people was pretty much standard. Had there, however, been a treaty in place like our brothers and sisters across the ditch on the land of the Long White Cloud with the Maori Nation and the signing of the Waitangi Treaty, then we wouldn't be debating this today. Recognition would have or should have been included in the Constitution. The fact that it is not leaves us less complete. By supporting the yes vote, it goes some way to reconciling that injustice. It gives voice to First Nations people in our Constitution and across our Western democratic political landscape. It's a voice we as a nation need to hear from. I look forward to seeing the yes vote being attained nationally and here too in this chamber. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Brophy. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I will actually, no, I won't, thank you, Mayor Sal, I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Okay, reserve your right. Teresa. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Summer.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Sally. I'll just get 6 minutes. I hope I get through this in 6 minutes. Okay, I am supporting this motion because I can't see any reason not to. Including an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice in the Constitution is such a small thing in the scheme of things and probably should have been done 200 years ago. I sincerely hope that Australians do not miss this opportunity to correct that omission. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I'm actually struggling to understand why anyone would oppose the voice. Some even argue it doesn't go far enough. The voice in itself is merely an advisory role. There is no direct power. It cannot say, we want all the mining rights of Queensland and force the government to agree. It cannot force mainstream Australia to do anything at all, and it certainly cannot force anyone to pay the rent, as is circulating. That is unfounded nonsense. But an Indigenous voice can be persuasive. For example, it's likely that this council may not have the same position on Australia Day without Councillor Greg James, who is a proud Yorta Yorta man, in the room. In general, though, the reality is our political status quo ignores and dismisses Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices. So a yes vote is not guaranteed to make any difference at all, but I think it's a good start. Some say that constitutional recognition will divide our nation, but I'm sorry to burst that bubble, but statistically, Australia is already very divided. First Nations people have never achieved parity. The terms reconciliation and closing the gap literally describe rifts in the system. For instance, we know life expectancy is decades earlier for ATSI people. There's overrepresentation in our prison system with regular deaths in custody. Sacred land is destroyed for profits. Education is low. Substance abuse and mental health issues are rife. Living conditions in some remote areas are close to third world, and we could go on. Not an exhaustive list. If we truly are united, we would not allow fellow Australians to fall so far behind. So I'm asking people not to be swayed by the one or two high-profile Indigenous people who publicly oppose the voice, because they do not speak for everyone. Media focus on these single case studies has drowned out the polls that suggest 80% of Indigenous people do support the voice. And there will always be conflicting opinions. But I urge you to see through the political rhetoric and make up your own minds. The voice will not undermine Australian sovereignty. It will not undermine our shared identity. It will not undermine our patriotism. In fact, it will build on these things. In 1967, over 80% of Australians voted in favour of offering the vote to First Nations people, and the sky did not fall. Saying the referendum lacks detail is simply an excuse. It's white noise, forgive the pun. It's deliberately designed to confuse, overcomplicate, and cast doubt on the issue. How the voice is structured is not what we're voting on. That will be decisions for successive governments and will undoubtedly evolve over time. We are voting on one simple question, and that is, should we listen? So there's no shame in admitting that the Westminster system did not have a good track record of positive choices for Indigenous people. To move forward together, we must confront, accept, and share an understanding of those past mistakes. Otherwise, we are still doomed to repeat them. Racial stereotypes since convict days depict Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people as starving degenerates, and there's no mention of the colonial impact that made them so. This stereotype reduced 70,000 years of continuous Indigenous culture to that one moment in time, and it still pervades to this day. That stereotype keeps mainstream Australians in denial, because it's far easier to blame the victims of colonisation than decisions made by our own ancestors and forefathers. A voice may challenge this national amnesia by generating more positive and truthful narratives that will allow healing in time and a stronger country. So Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been telling us that change must come from their own communities. That's self-determination. Current and previous public health initiatives often miss the mark. For example, we hear about Northern Territory communities that use government-issued front doors as firewood, but not that the houses were so hot that they weren't fit for purpose and you couldn't even live in them. So a voice would quell those misunderstandings and stop those rumours from the source by pointing out the problems and the reasons why things are so. White Australian policies have caused cultural genocide, the stolen generation, unimaginable trauma. A voice in Parliament would disclose the harmful impact of these decisions before they are set in motion. It will allow Indigenous people to build aspirational dreams and start their own journey towards reconciliation and equality. And it certainly will not do any more harm than what's already been done. So I urge you to put your fear aside and vote yes. And I agree with Councillor Brophy, it will not impact you, it will only help others. So that's what
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Summer. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Just briefly, I fully endorse the motion that is under consideration. And by endorsing this motion, this council will be on the right side of the history. That's what I feel very strongly. That is to take a strong leadership position and provide the leadership in this matter instead of being a follower of misinformation, disinformation, or various politicized narratives that are misleading. This council can show its progressive side and give that assurance and confidence to our communities, particularly to those community members who are still very indecisive or they are not sure what they are going to do and what is the right decision, right step to take. So again, I also want to point out that a lot of time people believe or they say about councils that they should just stick to roads, rates and rubbish. But let's remind everyone that council is not only about roads, rates and rubbish. Council is about everything and anything to do with the community. And it touches on every aspect of community lives. And also, let's not forget that, as Councillor Brophy has highlighted, that Greater Shepparton has the largest of Aboriginal population outside metropolitan Melbourne. So that's for this reason, it's very important for council to consider this matter. And also, let's not forget that this is about responding to the invite from the First Nations people through the Uluru Statement. And the invite was to walk with them. And 3 things were highlighted in the Uluru Statement: to have a voice, treaty, and truth-telling. So it is really pleasing to see that we are now at this junction where we have to finally show some actions. And we are considering the voice to Parliament at this stage. And I'm very hopeful and I'm pretty sure that we will get to other 2 parts as well, which is the treaty and the truth-telling. So again, this, to me personally, it does not matter in which order we accomplish all these actions, but what is more important is that we respond to the invite that was sent to us through the Uluru Statement. So this having an Aboriginal voice to Parliament is the right step in the right direction, and I'm very happy to endorse this motion that is before us today. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No. I'll just very briefly, before I go to Councillor Adams, reserve his right to speak. I think who's spoken it has covered it extremely well, and there's probably not much more I can add to that, other than the fact that I'm extremely shattered that Councillor Greg James couldn't be here with us today, and he does pass on his sincere apologies that he's unable to be here today for arguably what is a significant moment, not only for him but the local First Nations community as well. For me personally, and what I encourage every community member out there before you go and make your decision is engage with someone that you feel comfortable to speak to about this particular decision that is going to be upon us before the end of the year, and that's what I chose to do. There is a lot of information out there, but I spoke to someone that I can trust and have a relationship with, that can share with me what this would mean to him and our local community here, and that's why I'm supporting this recommendation. So, Councillor Adam, did you want to reserve your right to respond? Yep, no worries.
Make a few comments. As you alluded to, I think all the other councillors made some very poignant comments. I don't think I can add to that.
Yeah, he's reserved his right to reply. I'll come back to you for closing comments. Yep.
That's right. I was about to pump you up too, Councillor Brophy.
Thank you.
Pump me up for controlling the meeting if you
Pump everyone up. In fact, everything that's been said here today is all relevant and all true and correct. How much more I can add, I'll probably get a bit technical here. I would have liked to see the motion state that the council support the establishment of an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament via an alteration to the Constitution, because I think that's a key actual wording in this whole subject here. Our Indigenous people have had a voice for a long time, often not heard, very weak, but they've always had a voice, especially in the last 20 or 30 years. There's all sorts of committees and organisations that normally speak to local, state and federal government on an ongoing basis. However, altering the Constitution to be sure that that voice is permanent, I think that's the key factor in this whole argument here. That cannot be taken away. What that voice looks like, that'll evolve, as Councillor Summers said. People who say they're not over the detail, well, what detail can we give people when ultimately this is an advisory committee only? So as situations change, the advice will change. And that advice will just go back to the decision makers and our lawmakers, and they will then consider that, just like we consider public consultation submissions here at this council. That's probably slightly weak, and that's what a lot of people are pretending to use that as an excuse as to why they don't want to support it. The real crux of this issue is that the Constitution will alter to make that a permanent voice, as it should be. Now, what that looks like, as I said, in the future, that's determinable by the actual organisations that are presenting. So I fully support this, obviously, for all the reasons that have been given here today. It should have happened many years ago. However, it is here today. We've got to take this, the community, even the Aboriginal community that are expressing concern about maybe they don't support it. I don't think any of them actually don't support having a voice. They're probably more concerned into having a more powerful voice, in the sense, if this was about having a seat in the lower or upper house, permanent seat that actually votes, that would be a different conversation. I'm sure people would have different arguments, but it's not. It's an advisory committee. But as I said again, I'll reiterate, the fact that the Constitution reflects that voice is absolutely paramount in this discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Brophy, closing comments?
Thank you, Mayor Saley. Just to sum up, thank you everyone for their contribution to the conversation today in regards to the recommendation that's been put forward. Unfortunately, as we've said, that Councillor James is ill at home, but he is watching live. So I'm sure he would have a lot to say, and people can always approach him and ask him if what his views are on certain things as well. Again, it'll be up to the public to decide whether or not, as leaders of the community, they take on board what we've put forward, and then ultimately they'll cast it at the ballot later this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. We'll now go to vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and opposed. Councillors, we now go to page 27 of the agenda, item 10.5, which is the Greater Shepparton Public Health Advisory Committee. Endorsement of membership in terms of reference. There is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the council, 1, appoint the following members to the Greater Shepparton Municipal Public Health Advisory Committee for a period of 2 years, commencing on 1st October 2023 and expiring on 1st October 2025. Members as listed in the recommendation. Point 2, adopt the terms of reference for the Greater Shepparton Public Health Advisory Committee. And point 3, acknowledge the contribution of outgoing committee members and write to thank them for their service.
Councillor Spinks. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Brophy.
I second that motion, Mayor Saley.
Thank you. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Our Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Advisory Committee, in my opinion, is one of the most important that council has. Public health truly impacts every aspect of our lives, from transport to physical health to employment and education to housing to crime and safety. And our very knowledgeable and passionate committee members are key to implementing and advising our public health strategic plan, which is one of the key documents that's used to inform our council plan. Council seeks new nominations to this committee every 2 years, and after a recent membership drive, I would like to congratulate all of the successful appointments for the next 2 years. This committee comprises up to 15 members, including a councillor representative, and 11 successful applications were received. The applications represent a diverse cross-section of the community, and acceptance of these applications will ensure the advisory committee will be effective in considering and making recommendations to council in relation to a public health plan with representation across all livability focus areas. We have a number of re-nominations and new members to the group, and as chair of this particular committee, I am very excited to have your perspective, experiences and energy in the room over the next 2 years. I also would like to deeply thank the outgoing members, Carla Dixon, Dr. John McKellar and Katie Richter, for their contributions to the committee and community. As a smaller but also important note, today we are also accepting the updated terms of reference for this committee, which has undergone minor changes in line with a standard review process. The endorsement of new members to the advisory committee and associated terms of reference will allow the continuation of this collaborative network to address public health matters. The committee will continue to play a pivotal role in meeting council's statutory obligations to involve community in the development and annual review of each public health strategic plan and annual implementation plan to monitor progress and capture achievements. Importantly, the committee will continue to provide council with advice and recommendation on where and how the health and wellbeing of its community can be improved. And so a heartfelt thank you to our outgoing members and a very warm welcome to our returning and new members. Thank you.
Councillor Spinks. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Saleh, and here, Councillor Spinks, you've summed up beautifully. I'd just like to say I know most of the ones that have been nominated here for to go on, and really this is a cavalcade of health professionals and associated allied health people with interest in allied health and practitioners and support people. And as Councillor Dobson would probably say, those who are nominated have skin in the game, pardon the pun, but they are invested. They are invested in the community, and I'd certainly like to thank Katie Ritchie, Carla Dixon, and the legendary Dr. John McKellar, who has contributed enormously, all of them during their term. Thank you.
Very good, Councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Samar.
Thank you, Mayor Saleh. I'm very supportive of the recommendation of the motion before us. I just think that we could possibly put more weight on this committee. The municipal, the public health and wellbeing plan, municipal public health and wellbeing plan, sorry, I'm reading an acronym, is actually required under the state government requirements, and we have an exemption so that instead of a standalone document, it actually is embedded as part of our council plan, which I think dilutes it somewhat. The fact that the Victorian government would like that as a standalone thing tells me that we should possibly be putting a lot more weight on public health and not just having a committee tick and flick what we need to do. We could actually put some funding behind the committee and follow through with some of the varied, wonderful ideas that come out of this, because again, there's so much expertise and so much potential, but it just, their ideas don't seem to grow legs. So in my opinion, public health is the most important thing we could be focused on, and there is room to grow. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Samar. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? No. Any other councillors that would like to speak for the motion? No. Any closing comments, Councillor Spinks?
Yeah, just briefly to say, I wholeheartedly agree, Councillor Summer. Public health touches every single decision that we make, and I don't think that we do prioritise its consideration as much as we could. I do absolutely agree with that. And I would love to see, and I know there's an appetite within the committee to be empowered to have more of a voice and to really latch on to it, at the very least, that advisory component to support recommendations to us a lot more. So I certainly would hope that we would encourage and be open to that happening, because, again, cannot say this strongly enough, public health is not just physical health. We often think of it that way. It is everything, every single thing in the way that we live our lives, and it should be right at the front. So thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Councillor Spinks. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillors, we now go to page 33 of the agenda, item 11.1, contracts awarded under delegation July 2023. There is a recommendation. Can I please put forward as a motion? Councillor Sommer.
Thank you. I move that the council, one, note the contracts awarded under delegation pursuant to a formal tender process for the reporting period, and two, note that the requests for tender advertised but not yet awarded.
Can I please have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Adam.
Motion, thank you, Mayor Sally.
Councillor Sommer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only to say that it's still very light on. We've only just awarded one that I can see, and the rest are under evaluation. So hopefully that will pick up, and that's it.
Very good, thanks, Councillor Sommer. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion? Very good, thank you. Any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? No, any closing comments, Councillor Sommer?
No, thank you.
Very good, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 36 of the agenda, item 11.2, appointment of independent member to Audit and Risk Management Committee. There is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion? Councillor Dobson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sally. I'll move that the council appoint Daniel Boutel, I think that's the correct pronunciation, to the position of independent member on the Audit and Risk Management Committee for a period of 3 years, commencing 16 August 2023 and concluding on 15 August 2026.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Can I please have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Brophy.
I second that motion, Mayor Sally.
Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, just briefly, our last independent member of the Audit and Risk Management Committee formally resigned in May of this year, creating a vacancy. We worked closely with the committee chair to conduct an EOI, expression of interest, to find a suitably qualified applicant. 5 applications were received. In response to the publicly advertised expression of interest, 3 applicants were shortlisted and interviewed by yourself, Councillor Sally, and the chair. Following the evaluation of interview scores and completion of reference check, Daniel was identified as the preferred candidate for this position. It's interesting to note that the purpose of this committee is to assist council in fulfilling its governance responsibilities and having oversight in areas including financial and performance statements, etc., and it goes on. So only the best qualified people are appointed to this position, and I think we have a good one at that.
Very good, Councillor Dobson. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just on saying, thank you, Ms. Ali, just on saying that I'd like to thank Mr. Vivek Chopra, who's been on that committee for a period of time, and it is a very high-level committee, and he's acquitted himself very well in that time, and thank you for his service.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? No. I'll just really quickly, I know Councillor Dobson covered it well, and obviously Councillor Brophy, yes, thank Vivek for his time. I was part of this process, and it was the first time that I'd been through it, and I have to acknowledge Goran Matrevsky for the role he played in this. He was exceptional, and learned a lot from him, and obviously the background support from Chris Teitzel, our Director of Corporate Finance, Jody Sessions, and Rebecca Good, who supported us on the journey. It was good. It was a good experience to go through, and I'm really confident that we've got a great person that understands the region and the role, and has been involved in these type of committees as well. So yeah, really excited to see what Daniel can bring to the group, and glad to finally endorse it tonight and get that extra number we've been seeking on that committee for a little bit. So very good. Closing comments, Councillor Dobson?
No, thank you.
Very good. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 39 of the agenda, item 11.3, Audit and Risk Management Committee Charter. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I put forward the recommendation that council adopt the Audit and Risk Management Committee Charter as attached.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Can I have a councillor second that motion?
I'll second the motion, Mayor Sally.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Developed and reviewed under Section 53 of the Local Government Act. This was last reviewed back in 2021 and is reviewed every 2 years. There's been minor changes that have been included in that. It's basically rewording, adding, documenting and amending different sections of that, covering off in regards to the councillor members of the committee, the quorum requirements, the committee program and the annual performance assessment.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just quickly, the committee must have an annual work program to work with, and that has been revised in accordance with or in aligned with this document. And again, as I said before, this is a very important a committee that the council has at its disposal.
Very good, thank you, councillor Dobson. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? No, any closing comments, councillor Brophy?
No, thank you, Mayor Sala.
Very good, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 42 of the agenda, item 11.4, appointment of acting chief executive officer policy. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Adam.
Put the motion forward. Mayor Sally, that the council adopts the appointment of acting chief executive officer policy as attached.
Thank you, councillor Adam. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Summer. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Quickly, this is just an administrative type of motion. Obviously making some minor changes to our acting chief executive officer policy. I'll quickly read this, it's very short. The minor administrative changes have been made to the review of the policy. This includes a of the policy to the current council policy template and the replacement of any references to the Local Government Act 1989 to the Local Government Act 2020. That's basically it.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Adam. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, just housekeeping.
Thank you. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? No. Closing comments, councillor Adam?
No, thank you.
We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 44 of the agenda, item 11.5, July 2023 monthly financial report. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward to the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Sally. I'll move that the council note the July 2023 monthly financial report.
Thank you. Can I please have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Brophy.
Second that motion, Mayor Sala.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, it's be short and sharp financial report, only going for 1 month, but I'd just like to commend our finance department on realigning the report and making it more user friendly. So I do thank Chris and his team for putting that together. The projected budget for the year will show an underlying operating deficit of 7.8% or 7.8 million or 5.2%. But I'm happy to report that the adjusted underlying result deficit is a bit lower than that at $7.4 million, which reflects the challenges that council faces in the sustainable delivery of services the community value and need. The interesting thing, and I've brought this up before, but the year-to-date figures show a surplus. The surplus includes the annual rates generated, and this will move towards the projected deficit. Under the Local Government Act, the full complement of rates for the year must be put in at the start of the year, which, in my opinion, always inflates the figures as they are. But that's the way that we've got to operate, and I think we've gone through that enough. The ending liquidity for the 23-24 year is projected to be 139%. That is current assets over current liabilities, and that's in a pretty healthy range, and it's in the desired range. The capital works program for the year is $64 million, and there will be some carryovers for a small number of projects. But I just want to point out that the net cost to council as a result of the October 22 floods, we're still going through this, for the 23-24 financial year is forecast to be $447,000, which the council has got to pick up. But the total cost of the projected expenditure was over $19 million, of which nearly $19.5 million, of which $19 million has been covered by insurance and funding. So we continue to, I suppose, see the results of the flooding, and I think that's why council over this next 12 months has got to be very conservative in its approach. Just a couple of other things, if I could bring this up. The underlying, as I say, the underlying adjusted underlying result is 7.4 deficit, which is an improvement over what we budgeted. The underlying result again is improving. The capital renewal program against depreciation is slightly improving, and liquidity at 139% is steady, and that's the one that I always look at as liquidity. That is current assets over current liabilities, so all in all, Not much to report, only a month in, Mayor Sally, but a good result. And again, I congratulate our finance team on putting forward a readable summary of our finances.
Very good, councillor Dobson. Councillor Brophy, would you speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I think councillor Dobson pretty much summed up all the notes that I had there. Again, I too look at the liquidity to make sure that we're on target there, and basically, are we solvent? And we are quite well to 139%. Liquidity is certainly in the range that we need it to be. And as councillor Dobson pointed out, that you're 1/12 of the year in, so you haven't got a real gauge on how that year will figure out on the year to date at this stage, because there's a lot of figures that are put in at the beginning and they work themselves out throughout the year. So, but all in all, yep, it's looking pretty good. July was a good year.
Thank you. Very good, councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? No? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thanks. I just wanted to take an opportunity here. The second risk with a moderate consequence is our adopted financial plan, which we measure these monthly reports against. That financial plan is for 10 years, and the pace of change recently should perhaps put us on the front foot in reviewing that, just in case perhaps if that's not updated with accurate input, then perhaps all our measurements are wrong. So I would be in favour of looking at that, which I've mentioned many times, and that is not the conversation at the moment, so we'll move on.
Good, thank you, councillor Summer. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No? Any closing comments, councillor Dobson?
No, all been said. Thank you, Mayor Sally.
Very good. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 47 of the agenda, item 11.6, CEO Employment and Remuneration Council Policy. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Can I have someone move that, please?
Okay, I'll move the motion that the council note and endorse the revised Chief Executive Officer Employment and Remuneration Council Policy.
Thank you, councillor Abdullah. Can I have a councillor second that motion, please?
I'll second that motion, Mayor Sally.
Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, this policy has been updated, and we are considering considering endorsement of the revised CEO Employment and Remuneration Council Policy. Some of the in some areas our current policy lacked clarity and to a certain extent transparency as well. So I'm very pleased to say that the policy has been updated and those gaps have been filled. And I would like to thank our council directors and officers who have worked on this policy, who have listened to some of the inputs and feedback that were provided to them by councillors, and also through the process that we recently undertook in terms of CEO's contract expiry related actions. So a lot of feedback was available through that process, and some of the highlights of the policy update include the clarity around recruitment and appointment of a CEO. If you compare both the policies, our current policy, the policy that we have been following, did not have enough details and it did not have enough clarity. So in this updated version, enough content is available to remove any confusions around the recruitment and appointment of a CEO. There are two more aspects which I'm particularly pleased about, that those have been included in the revised policy. One is about the decision around. So the policy is clear about the reappointment of the CEO, and it clearly highlights that any decision around the appointment of the CEO will be made by council resolution. So this is good governance. In our previous policy, this section lacked this particular statement, due to which in that process just that we followed recently, we did have certain challenges. And furthermore, this revised policy also clarifies the role of the independent member on this committee. on the committee which is responsible for CEO's remuneration and appointment matters. And this committee is only an advisory committee. I just want to emphasize again. However, this committee has a very important role according to the policy. But the role of the independent member of the committee was not very clear in the previous version of this policy, and that has been clarified, and the updated policy clearly outlines that the independent member has voting rights. So all in all, I'm happy with the updates that have been included in this updated policy, and I hope that it will add to the transparency and good governance policies of our council. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Ms. Ali. I agree entirely with what Councillor Abdullah said, and obviously she highlighted all the particular points. I just want to say that the existing policy was rather vague, as Councillor Abdullah said. And unfortunately, these deficiencies aren't detected until a policy is tested, and we've had that opportunity over the last 3 or 4 months. And that's where some of these things to me were quite glaring, and to the other committee members as well. So this new review has fixed, I think, most of those issues. And until next time, if we can identify any other deficiencies, this one seems to be pretty solid.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Adam. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillor Samar.
Thank you, Ms. Ali. I've said many times I don't think we need a committee to assess the performance of our CEO. I think it's a conversation that's far too important to be outsourcing. It's the Greater Shepparton CEO is a huge responsibility, and there's 9 of us. We literally have 1 employee, and as it stands, we dilute all of our opinions and put it into a committee, and that committee does not include all councillors, so there is that exclusionary thing there. The committee members do not necessarily have the lived experience that we have in terms of dealing with systems and processes and people. And when you put people in there who don't have that, they're generally a bit more, well, less on the pointy end, I suppose. So it ensures that averaged out, there's a safe median curve. It's not necessarily a glaring, not using my words very well, I apologise. I hope you know what I mean. So yes, there are a set of principles that have been included now, and sometimes I think that perhaps less is more. We have a lot more in this policy that I think what we've included is far too vague and potentially subject to legal challenge by anyone who we may or may not decide should not be CEO anymore. These principles are that broad that they could apply in court as a legal challenge, I think. But of course, that hasn't been tested. That's just a risk that I would be liking to draw to everyone's attention. I think perhaps, I know we're required to have a policy. We are not required to have a committee. If we are required to have a policy, I think possibly even just a 1 paragraph would be enough to adequately spell out what we need to do, because the way it's gone now is so far removed from the councillors themselves that I feel like it's taking on a life of its own. And point 6 in the report is alarming that it's even included there. The policy is clear that any decision relating to the extension or ceasing of a CEO contract will be made by council resolution. Well, I should hope so. The fact that it's there and that was even in doubt makes me wonder if within this short space of time we've had this policy in this committee that we have gotten that far off track from the fact that this is our 1 employee and we really ought to be dealing with that in-house. And with the consultation, it says feedback was received from Councillor Abdullah, Councillor Brophy and the Mayor. Well, I'm giving feedback. I have given feedback in briefings and emails and all the rest of it. I've moved a notice of motion that suggested we should disband this committee because I feel that strongly about it. So I'm just using the opportunity to say that again, even though I know all the hands will go in the air regardless. But thank you for the opportunity.
No worries, Councillor Summer. Very good. Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Spinks.
I don't have any pre-prepared notes on this one, so this is going to just come out of my head. I've gone back and forth on this policy because I'm torn whether to support it because we went through a process, we identified weaknesses and we've tightened up those weaknesses, and that is what is in front of us. Supportive of that. However, through that process, I no longer support the existence of the working group form of doing it. I found that there was if the purpose of it was to sort of condense the councillor group to get on with the admin side of the processes, I still found that there was quite a lot of bias in that would exist within the 9 of us and that wasn't removed from that process. And I didn't find that the benefit of that committee was worth the extra effort of having it. So I'm no longer supportive of having that committee from the perspective of how it functions. So I feel remiss to support this particular policy knowing that that's how I feel, and yet, as I started with, we've done the process, we've tightened it up, and now the policy exists and reflects that. We'll see how I vote in a minute, but I just wanted to share that is my thoughts behind this process and where I'm sitting with this. Yeah, well, I hear what both sides are saying, and I think they're both valid and relevant. So that's my thoughts.
Very good. Thanks, Councillor Spinks. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No? Any closing comments, Councillor Abdullah?
Yeah, quickly. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Summer and Councillor Spinks. You have made some good points. I think the point about whether there should be a committee or all councillors should be doing the job, it's something that in the beginning when this decision was being made, I was very clear that committee is the right thing to do because it's it reflects administrative efficiency and effectiveness, and that's how most of the boards operate, that they have a committee for CEOs employment matters, and yes, so wholeheartedly supported the formation of that committee. However, in the previous round, how things were undertaken and how, perhaps due to lack of clarity in the policy, perhaps due to other concerns and issues, obviously things were not really. They were less than desirable. They were less than satisfactory. So I support you, Councillor Sama, in that aspect. However, to say that we all have to, we all should be doing, I feel that, that this is a good practice to have a committee. And at the end of the day, the committee is not making any decision. It's just streamlining the processes. It's just coordinating and facilitating this important issue of CEOs' employment matters. So the committee is not making any decisions, but this council is responsible for considering the committee's advice and recommendations and then make a decision. So the final decision is still up to this council, 9 councillors sitting around the table considering the recommendations. So I'm sort of comfortable in that aspect. And look, I'm still not sure that 100% that it will be a perfect solution even after all these additions and updates in the policy, but I am happy to give it a go. And especially when it comes to the role of the independent member on the committee, I'm pleased to see that has been relatively has been clarified. Relatively speaking, we have yet to test that clarity in the real process. But look, I am happy to stay with the committee because that is what I've seen and I have also done on most of the boards and the committees, and it works well. But we have yet to see how it will turn out in our particular scenario. So happy to endorse the updates in the policy. Thanks,
Councillor Abdullah. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillors, we now go to page 50 of the agenda, item 12.1, Welsford Street stages 5 and 6 draft concept designs. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Ms. Ali. I'll move that the council Move the recommendation as a motion, as it is printed on page 50 of the agenda. Thank you.
Good move. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you.
I did, yeah.
Yes,
You did have your hand up, didn't you?
I did. I just.
What do you have to say?
Yeah. Oh, councillor Summer, would you like to second the motion?
Yes, I second the motion.
Yeah, but here,
Very good. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, yes. So this project has been underway for a number of years now, and today we are looking to exhibit the draft designs for the final stages. The Welsford Street upgrade seeks to improve traffic flow, safety and amenity for vehicles and pedestrians, intention to improve traffic movement and intersection safety significantly, and to redirect the main thoroughfare of our CBD and calm down Wyndham and High Streets while retaining car parks and trees wherever possible. This draft design is for stage 5 and 6 of the project, which is talking about the area from the KFC corner, around the Aquamoves corner, behind the Aldi car park and through to the police station and the Causeway High Street intersection. Council officers have conducted pre-draft consultation and have used submissions to inform the preparation of the draft concept designs. Councillors have provided initial feedback with further changes being made to intersection movements and much discussion around positioning of pedestrian and cycling paths. Now, to obtain feedback on the draft concept design and to identify any further issues and opportunities, council officers will undertake further community consultation on the draft concept designs from the 21st of August 2023 to the 18th of September. After consultation is complete, council officers will prepare a conversation report that will summarise all key themes raised in submissions and council officers' response to these key themes. These will then be outlined in submissions, the key themes and content outlined in submissions will be considered when preparing the final concept designs, and the final concept designs will be used by council officers to inform detailed designs and cost estimates that can be included in council's 10-year capital works program for consideration and to be accounted for in future budgetary process for eventual tender and construction. So to the community, sorry about that. Please take some time to view the draft concept designs once they are available and provide your feedback. This is a main stretch that many, if not all of us, would use at some point in our travels, and your feedback will be key to creating a safe and functional design.
Councillor Spinks. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. The upgrade of Welsford Street has been a priority for council for 3 decades. The City of Greater Shepparton Strategy Plan 1996 identified Welsford Street as a primary arterial road with the goal of distributing traffic around the Shepparton CBD and allow for Wyndham to serve as a shopping access function. So we're also investigating improved pedestrian and cycling access for Wyndham Street to make that more attractive for active transport and trying to make Welsford Street more attractive for through traffic. So literally just trying very hard to incentivise more people to use Welsford as an arterial road. There could be a loss of 24 on-street car parks and 1 loading zone as a result of this, but it will be potentially offset because we're also investigating how we can get some off-street car parking in there just to buffer that impact, because we know it's quite busy and car parks are at capacity already. And it's great that we've given trees the proper scrutiny that they deserve. Only 4 trees are expected to require removal, and I'm hoping possibly even less once we drill down into how we could possibly protect those too, because the trees down that street are gorgeous, and without that it'll lose its character and charm. So we are going to consultation on August 21 to 18th of September. So if everybody could give us their feedback, it was a great response to the last one. We had 42 submissions. So yes, any ideas, any feedback, even if it's in support, you don't have to object. Please go ahead on our websites and have a look.
Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thanks, Mayor Sally. It's important to understand that what this motion does, it authorises for exhibition the draft Welsford Street stages, etc. One of the things that's happened in this municipality, in Shepparton itself over the last 12 months, is the upgrading of various important intersections and streets around. Welsford Street comes to mind, for example, and out around SPC. And I know that our officers have done all they can to ensure that traffic discourse is minimised. And I would like to think that this will be a major function of this program when it gets up. We copped a lot of criticism, I think unfairly, about the Welsford Street intersection changes. That had to be done. And when you look at it now, and full marks to our team, they did a great job. And it just improves the flow around the place dramatically. And the continuation of the Welsford Street flow will improve it even more. I use that a lot myself, or that route itself, and it will continue to flow. I'd like to congratulate the council officers in looking at some of the ideas that councillors put up, and in fact went with those ideas, and others might want to expand on that. But certainly I think the timing and the length of time of the renovations when they do arrive will be an important issue.
Very good, Councillor Dobson. Thank you. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Yeah, Councillor Brooke.
Thank you, Mayor Saley. This is long overdue, this last part of Welsford Street. It's been in progressive stages all the way through. We're up to stages 5 and 6 now. It is just the draft concept designs that have been put forward to us, and I know that through council briefings and information that's been presented to us, that they've gone away and listened to what we've had to say on behalf of the community, and have taken that and put that into some of the designs as well. So that's very heartening. I know that particularly the bike area along there is well used. I did use it last week, and I can say it's in a pretty bad state at the moment, because I was up and down like a yo-yo on that bike to trying to stay on it, because it's pretty undulating through there. So that needs to be all fixed up as well. This is the opportunity for the public to go out there and to come back with some really constructive criticism, hopefully. Say, okay, well, this needs to be done and that needs to be done, and that can be incorporated into the designs as well, because we really want to make it absolutely ideal as it is up the north end of Welsford Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor
Thank you. I just want to point out to the reality of council's decision-making process that, of course, this is only going out for consultation, but even otherwise, there are many competing goals. There are many competing priorities that any decision comes with. And so council, while making this decision, has to consider all of those. Like, for instance, in this upgrade, we are looking at loss of 24 car park spaces versus improved traffic flow and road capacity on Welsford Street. So obviously it is going to be a hard decision if really we have to lose 24 car park spaces, but we also have to see what are we gaining out of it, and look at the bigger picture and the greater good aspect. So it's not only in this matter, but in all other matters. Just want to emphasize that that council really has to take care of many considerations, and these are difficult and complex matters. That the perception out there that council is not listening to us is really not the case. The case is that we have to listen to all aspects, to listen to all realities, and then come to a decision. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? All right, Councillor Spinks, any closing comments?
No, thank you.
Very good. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 62 of the agenda, item 13.1, which is Curbside Transition Program Stage 1. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Council 1 note the report for Stage 1 Curbside Transition Program, 2 endorse the introduction of a dedicated nappy collection and processing service commencing early 2024, and 3 endorse the introduction of a 360 litre commingled recycling bin as an option offered to residents on an as-needs basis.
Thank you, Councillor Spinks. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, yes. The initial feedback from the early rollout of Kyla and Chatura bin collection changes had an expectation. Let me start that again. We went into the initial feedback from the early rollout of Kayala and Shepparton bin collection changes with an expectation that contamination would increase as households adapted to the changes, and got things wrong as they worked to change behaviours. And that was always a totally understandable position to be in. We were changing something that had existed for quite a long time and asking our community to get on board with that. And these things take time. But I think it's really important to recognise that Kayala has shown to be in line with this expectation and have done a wonderful job of transitioning. And Tatura has in fact shown better than expected contamination rates following the frequency change. So our communities have adapted for the most part really well and are really taking this change on. Some of the key findings of the audit has been as expected, with bin fullness, contamination of nappies, soft plastics and textiles, and green waste still not being correctly moved to the green bins. But there again are all expected as a part of the process, and council is actively responding to these needs. We continue to offer larger bin upgrade options for households that require them. We continue to work hard on providing educational and behaviour change material to be sure the right items are going into the correct bins, remembering that the red bin should only be for things that cannot go in any other bin. And we are looking into options to introduce further waste diversion opportunities to our community. As the remainder of Greater Shepparton moves to the change frequency collections shortly, we will also be introducing a dedicated nappy collection and processing service which provides households with the opportunity to have nappies separately collected, to be recycled and to remove them from their red bins, remembering that a disposable nappy used for a few hours lives in landfill forever. We also are looking at the introduction of the glass-only bins to separate glass from the recycling process to make sure that it is uncontaminated and can be made straight back into new products, again remembering that glass can be recycled endlessly. And we're looking at the introduction of an even larger 360-litre recycling bin to make sure that we are diverting all recycling out of the red bin and back into recycling streams, because we know many of you are filling that bin right to the brim every fortnight. We are already seeing positive results from these changes, and in the long run these changes will be better for our council and our community, socially, environmentally and financially. And it's a huge compliment to our community at how well the majority of Kayala and Tatura have adapted to these changes. And now we have to make sure we aren't leaving anyone behind and keep making changes as we find them. And I really want to thank our council waste team that are passionately striving to find further improvements, innovations and opportunities. Nothing is waste until we decide it is, and I can't wait to see these new waste diversion changes and even more to come added to our transition. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Spinks. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. That was brilliant. That's all the detail. I just might speak a bit more generally. Big changes have been brewing since China decided not to accept any more waste from Australia, and that was because our waste was so contaminated, and that put the waste industry on its head. So we've had to reassess and implement measures to support a closed loop waste system, which basically means our end goal is to manage all the waste within Victorian borders. So EPA is actively discouraging landfill with their huge fees, and value adding resources and reusing resources is incentivised. So, I mean, personally, I think it'd be great to just build one big dirty MRF and employ all the locals to sort the resources from the waste and do it that way. But government, in its wisdom, has opted for behaviour change, and it has worked well in other countries, even though they may have 5 or 6 bins. So the reason for the behaviour change model is based off a waste hierarchy that puts reduction at the top of this pyramid, and they're expecting individuals to reduce how much waste they use. So I suggest that perhaps that pyramid is flawed because it's an unrealistic expectation for individuals. The onus really ought to be on the manufacturers to create the waste in the first place, as I can't imagine anyone saying, yeah, nah, can't order pizza tonight, sorry, the cardboard boxes won't fit in my recycle bin. So people do not use less waste, they just find other places to put it. So in this case, recycles are likely going into the red bin. Like my recycle bin's pretty much full every week, not every fortnight. There will be overflow. Otherwise it's getting dumped away from council's vision because we haven't noticed any increase in dumping. So 10 years ago, there was a waste audit. In 2012, it recognised that recycle bins was 75% capacity. So 360-litre recycle bins are cheaper than the increased collection frequency and allow for more bulky package material. So larger bins has less of a cost and an impost on the ratepayer, but it is an opt-in system. So you'd have to contact council to get these larger bins or talk to your landlord if you're renting. Larger bins did make it into an endorsed budget about 8 years ago, but was sadly struck out as an error. And we're now at 90% capacity for recycle bins, and I do lament the amount of contamination and money we could have saved in landfill airspace if we'd done this sooner, but I'm just loving that it's here now. And the nappy collection was regularly flagged with the Waste and Resource Recovery Group as a very important measure back in the day. So I'm very pleased that Greater Shepparton is moving ahead with this. It will lead other councils to do the same. We know disposable nappies make up about 1% of all landfill, which is extraordinarily high. And like Councillor Spink says, a couple of hours use and it's there forever. Cloth is always best, but we can't set unrealistic expectations. So we still need to work out the detail of how this might look, but taking this particular resource out of landfill to make fertiliser is exactly the kind of sustainable solution that we need. So I'd really like to thank the staff for their enthusiasm because it is quite contagious. They've presented us with a detailed, comprehensive audit that's resulted in sensible solutions. I hope it gains as much support in the community as it has with councillors because we all seem to be on board with these changes. So thank you very much.
Very good, Councillor Summer. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Just a couple of points. I'd like to congratulate the waste management team under our Director for Infrastructure in relation to the nappy disposal. I think this is such an innovative thing that not many councils around regional Victoria or even in Melbourne, metropolitan Melbourne, have seen to take this on board. It's a game changer. So congratulations. The second congratulations must go to the team who are doing all the publicity and getting around the community and, you know, talking to people and finding out what the problems are. That's the only way we can do it. The circular economy is with us. Councillor Summer is right. The problem starts with the manufacturers at that end rather than at the end of the rubbish collection. We've got to change perception. Otherwise, the whole world will have a problem we can't get out of. So I think this council is shown to be very, very progressive in the way in which we've, one, bitten the bullet and gone into this new management program of waste collection, but two, that nappy collection and disposal to me was a real game changer. Thank you.
Very good, Councillor Dobson. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sarley. Yes, well put, Councillor Spinks, and certainly Councillor Summer on that. That was really well put together. Curbside transition program, and it's stage one, and we've got to bear that in mind. And it is a transition for so many people. And I really do congratulate Tatura and Kyala. You know, we are achieving what we're setting out to do, and that is to reduce the landfill, recycle better, and to really have a better environment all around. Well done to the waste team, you know, certainly under the directorship, but the staff there, you know, the waste team actually listens. They actually explain, and I've heard them in front of the public, trying to explain it the best they can and to get people to understand why. And they adapt and make changes, as we've seen with this particular recommendation put forward, and they provide vision. So well done. We're at one stage. Tatura, Kyala, well done. The rest will get on board as we roll it out. And can I just say one thing in terms of waste is, I mean, I looked at it and it's really, I have the saying of one second waste. Spend 1 second to think what you've got in your hand, where to put it. Just 1 second will make the difference of where you actually put it in. So 1 second waste.
I like that. Very good. Might use that one. Very good, Councillor Brophy. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, want to say that I am very pleased to see the report and to see that the stage 2 delivery is proceeding, and I want to congratulate and say well done to our waste management team. But in particular, these 2 points where I know that Councillor Summer has been advocating for a long time. This is about the 360-litre commingled recycling bin. And myself was very keen to see weekly green bin collection, because at the end of the day, this is all about making sure that we are diverting waste from our landfills to save the planet and also save some costs for council. So well done, and I am looking forward to the transition, which I know that it's not going to be very smooth. We always have some bumpy roads, but nevertheless, this is all for a good cause. So well done. Thanks.
Very good, Councillor Bill. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Mayor Zali. I'd just like to see the community get on board, and I applaud Kale and Tatura that have already done, and echoing other comments. And congratulate the waste team around the No Time to Waste and the education behind it. Separating waste is, like other councils have already spoken about, it's all about, one planet, and yeah, just making the most of it. So well done to everyone. Thank you, Mayor Zali.
Very good, Councillor Hudson. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak? Motion? No? Really quickly before I go to Councillor Spinks, to be honest, when this rolled out, I'll be straight up that I wasn't actually happy with how it all sort of unfolded and the information, and basically it sort of just hit community pretty hard. And if we had our time again, I probably think I would have definitely suggested some different ways, and we probably would have gone about it a little bit differently. But since then, I can't commend the waste team, and I know I'm going to echo the comments that have already been made. Obviously, Gary, our director, and Liam, who seemed a bit nervous before he walked in here, but this is a good one, mate. Don't worry, this is all good. So, but basically,
November.
Yeah, I think I've said this in briefings a couple of times. Are we going to get a perfect model? No, we're not. We strive for perfection, and we're going to continue to adapt and grow and go through the changes that we will. And one of the key items, or two, that were identified virtually straight away was the nappy concern. So we've addressed that. Is that going to fix our problem? Let's wait and see. And I think it's so great that the team have presented that, and we're going to take that on board. And the 360 litre introduction of the commingle, I think that's going to be a game changer. I think that's one of the strongest messages that we've had come back consistent right across the Tatura and Kyla communities, that, hey, there's an overflow of our recycling. We want to do the right thing, so how are we going to help our community do the right thing? And it's about investing into our community through this process, and we're striving for that perfect model. Will we get a perfect model? Absolutely not, but that's what you strive for, and we're going to continually make necessary changes as we go through to bring community on for better outcomes. And I look forward to further announcements regarding our waste management as we progress. So well done to the team, and enough positive comments have been made from everyone else. If there's nothing else, I'll go to Councillor Spinks for closing comments.
No, thank you.
Very good. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and opposed. Councillors, we now go to page 68 of the agenda, item 13, award of contract extension for contract numbers 1588, 1589 and 1590 for interim curbside collection and processing services. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion?
Councillor, so Mr Mayor, I just calling.
I just put my hand up.
Yeah, Councillor Brophy, would you?
Thank you, Mayor Zali. I'd like to put forward the recommendation that's on page 68. The council award the extension of the following contracts for the period commencing the 1st of November 2023 to the 22nd of January 2025. I won't read through the different contracts there, but point 2 being to authorise the Chief Executive Officer to execute such documents as necessary to give effect to this resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Can I have a councillor second that motion?
Yes, I'll second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Zali. This is an extension to bring into line the processing timetable for a new tender process on waste management, and that certainly being the curbside collection and the processing services. And that was due to abandoning the previous resource recovery collection with the Hume tender, which was which would Hume tender. This particular one, the new contract will be looking at curbside collection services, recyclable processing, food organics, garden organics processing, and glass. And potentially, based on other information, it was going to be at, say, 7.5 years by 7.5 years, so in essence a 15-year contract, and we're looking at tens of millions of dollars in different contracts being put together there, possibly the largest and the longest contract that council will have. This particular extension is with the existing companies, with Veolia and Western Composting, and it'll take us through till January 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sally. I'll be very brief. This motion is a consequence of a motion carried by council on the 11th of April this year. I think I speak for everyone. None of us should be here today to relitigate any previous council decision that was considered, robustly debated and finally resolved. Suffice to say, a decision was made to abandon the previous tender process, reset and move forward and conduct a new tender process. So here we are today moving forward. The awarding of contract extensions to the current service providers is necessary to accommodate a smooth transition to the future successful tenderer for these contracts. As a condition of the current provider's contract, they must enter into discussions with council regarding any contract extensions that may be requested by council. This has occurred and resulted in the motion before us here today. My only concern is the cost of these extensions over the previous recommended successful applicant's price has more than doubled from the original conservative estimate back in April. As an eternal optimist, believe it or not, I would like to believe the new tender process results in a more competitive pricing in the hope that we can offset the now over $3 million estimate extra spend in conducting a new tender process and extending these contracts. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Adam. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Sommer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am supportive of the extension. Less comfortable moving motions with no dollar figure attached. We're told that figure is commercial in confidence, and if so, perhaps this item should have been in the confidential section. The report does outline a 5% increase on top of the tender quote, which I'd have thought should also be commercial in confidence, but clearly not. The last process for me with collaborative procurement, it's been a messy and tense experience. The internal handling of that contract was not ideal, to say the least, as far as I'm concerned. Entering into collaborative procurement for such a large and important contract.
The internal handling of that process.
What's your concern?
Can we have some more detail?
Councillor Sommer, did you make a comment there about the process?
Oh yeah, I took out dog's breakfast because I didn't think you'd approve, so I put tents and.
We just heard that.
What was
That's the criticism of the.
So how you said there was an intense process. What else did you say? What was the concern? Sorry, how much? Wait, just.
It was criticism of the internal handling of the process.
Did you?
Ideal,
The
yes.
process was absolutely superb, pure, best governance you could find, and I will not accept that criticism
Yeah.
for 1 minute.
Well, I will not accept that interpretation.
Councillor Sommer, if you can expand on that criticism.
Okay. I can't speak for anyone else, right? But
No, then I'd
breaker for
probably
me,
suggest that you retract the comment and.
I'm not retracting that comment. I'm going to talk about the deal breaker.
Justified.
She can speak to the motion. Don't worry, no, Councillor Sommer, continue, you can speak to the motion and I've asked you to retract it. If you choose not to retract it, that's your choice, but I'd like you to retract the comment that you've made about it being what was your concern, Pete, the word?
Inefficient, I think it was.
No, it wasn't that. It was, we'll check the records.
Not ideal.
Messy and tense.
Messy and intense?
Okay, I can retract those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Proceed.
Anything else?
No, that's fine. Well, Peter, we're
I'll
concerned.
check the record.
So,
Yep.
that's fine.
And well, I was going to go on and say I cannot speak for anyone else, but for me, the deal breaker with the collaborative procurement was deviating from our own policy guidelines. We did not apply the same criteria with local content at the set percent that we've agreed on in our own policy. And this crucial point was not stipulated prior to entering the MOU. And I've been really wanting to say that publicly because people keep questioning why and how and saying nobody's saying why. This is why for me. I believed in good faith that the same weighting criteria for local content would still apply, but it did not. And that was the deal breaker for me. That's all I wanted to say. So happy to move on. Lessons learned, healthy scepticism towards any other collaborative procurement opportunities that may cross our path, but so happy to move on from that.
Thank you, councillor Summer. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Yes, I reject the thought.
Rights,
Pardon?
as is your right.
I reject the thought that this was messy or inefficient or any other words that you want to put together. This process was designed by, I think, 12 councils over the Hume region. It was auspiced by the Victorian State Government, and there, I think, were 24 individual people on the assessment panels. It was supported by governance, it was supported by legals, and it was supported by management. And I had a good look at it, and I was of the belief that it couldn't have got a better system. Because we didn't go with it, that's a decision that was made. But under no circumstances, with due respect, could I agree that this process was anywhere but super efficient.
Thank you, councillor Dobson. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Yes, I fully support the motion in front of us. I think that any conversation, any debate around previous motions, previous decisions are really moot. We've already done that, been there, had those conversations, and what's really in front of us is just a decision to organise this process to keep our bins being collected, is what it comes down to. If we don't approve this, then there's a chance they won't, and that is not acceptable to our community, so we must make a decision. I think it is worth noting that as a consequence of previous decisions, it is going to cost about another $3 million to the council and to the community. I think that that is just transparent decision-making and consequences of decision-making for that to be publicly available. But what we have in front of us is a decision to continue with an extension of the current contract so that our bins continue to be collected in the efficient manner that we expect to maintain public health and safety and the general service that we need to provide. So supportive of the extension of these contracts. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Spinks. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Councillor? No? Closing comments, councillor Briefing?
Just very briefly to say that you're right, councillor Spinks. We don't want to end up like Paris, and we don't want rubbish everywhere. We need our bins collected, and that's really important. And that's what this particular one is all about. And councillor Adams is absolutely correct. It's the bigger picture, the overall picture on what the overall contract or contracts will look like at the end of the day. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, councillor Briefing. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 72 of the agenda, item 14, documents for signing and sealing. Nil received. Item 15, councillor reports. There's one there under 15.1.1, councillor activities, July 2023. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion? Councillor Ladson.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I'd like to move the motion on page 73 of the the recommendation that the council receive and note the summary of the councillors' community interactions and informal meetings of councillors.
Thank you, councillor Ladson. Councillor, second that motion. Councillor Spinks. Councillor Ladson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Sally.
Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
It's always a moment to recognise the vast number of events, committees, events, opportunities for us to connect with the community that they invite us to, and we're grateful for, and that happen across our community. So far and wide across the municipality, there have been a number, as listed in the report, of events that have gone on that we have made our way to. And I just want to take a moment to recognise the No Time to Waste event that happened in the holidays. That was spectacular, and well done to all community members that came along and got a free coffee and watched the movies and got to go in a garbage truck. That was fantastic. Also highlighting the flood outlook and recovery updates that have happened across our community. They're an important aspect of council's responsibility to provide accurate information and to keep our community informed. And I know it was a bit of a scary time, but thankfully we've all come through it perfectly fine from this instance. Also, a highlight was the local government candidate information session, which there was almost more current councillors than prospective councillors, but that's okay. It was only the first one. And certainly I suggest that the community keep an eye out for more of those, because they're a great opportunity to come along and ask questions and just get a bit of an understanding. The rest of the list is fantastic. So just another month of really great stuff. Thanks.
Very good, Councillor Spinks. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Brophy.
Yes, pretty well covered by Councillor Spinks, particularly the flood recovery and updates, of which there's another one to be held in Mildura, I think, tomorrow evening. The committee work that's being done, there's so many committees that are up and running, and full participation nearly by all the advisory and community members that are attending them, as well as councillors. You know, we've been working hard behind the scenes. Every councillor has been working hard on their committees, and also with joy, the amount of citizenship ceremonies that have been conducted here in Greater Shepparton. There's been a backlog of ones through COVID that were able to get their ceremony done and take the oath, etc. And how many people really want to make Australia their home, and the Golden Valley as well. So well done for all the council activities.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Yeah. Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you. I just want to highlight one of the events that I'm very pleased that we have finally started. Not that this is about councillor catch-up in Kathendra, and this is about councillors wanting to have a one-on-one session with our small town communities. Not that we don't have it very often, but we have it in different contexts, maybe in context of some other event that's happening, that we go to those towns and have a chat with the community members. However, recently councillors and with the leadership of our mayor, Councillor Shane Sali, we have decided to start a regular periodic catch-ups with our small town communities. The first one was in Kathendra, and I was very pleased to be there, and it was a good turnout because we had so many community members. They came up to us and we talked about all things related to Kathendra. And in future, going forward, we have also already scheduled other small town catch-ups. So please, you know, this is a wonderful opportunity for us and for the community members to come and talk about their town and their communities. I'm very pleased to see that it has finally started, and looking forward to catching up with our community.
Very good. Councillor Abdullah, thank you. Any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Very good. Any closing comments? Councillor Spinks? Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Latson. You moved it.
Yes, the wrap-up Leto's deep dive, the NAIDOC Week celebration, which was a week-long event. There was a full suite of activities available for free and for the local community. It was well attended. I got to a lot, and as well as other councillors. And that's all for Leto's deep dive. Thank you.
Very good. We got away with a lot. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried and opposed. Councillors, we now go to page 75 of the agenda, item 16.1, notice of motion 11/2023 environmental water opposition. There is a recommendation. Can I please have a councillor put that forward as a motion?
Thank you, Mayor Sally. I move that the council, one, acknowledge the meeting that the Greater Shepparton City Council Mayor Shane Sali and CEO Peter Harriott had with the Federal Minister for Water on Thursday the 3rd of August during a recent delegation to Federal Parliament to discuss the implications of the MDBP, Murray-Darling Basin Plan on the Goulburn Valley region. 2, assist the Federal Minister for Water to understand the economic impact of the Basin Plan on the Goulburn Valley region. 3, advocate for an extension of time for the completion of the Basin Plan so that appropriate environmental infrastructure works and measures can be completed. 4, work with the state and federal governments to ensure that any further water recovery is subject to appropriate socio-economic assessment. And 5, if remaining water is to be sourced to meet the targets of the Basin Plan outside of the environmental infrastructure works and measures, that this water be sourced from other areas other than the Goulburn Murray Irrigation District.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Can I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Brophy.
Second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Would you like to speak to the motion?
I would, thank you, Mayor Sally. I wish firstly to thank Minister Plibersek for hosting a meeting with yourself and CEO Peter Harriott last week in Canberra. Given the Minister's heavy work schedule, I know the council was delighted that you were able to spend that time with her, so I thank her. Council wishes to work collaboratively with the Minister to understand the economic impact of the existing basin plan. In 2012, the basin plan was agreed to after years of negotiating in an attempt to improve the health of the river system. As at 31st of May 2023, 2,170 gigalitres of surface water has been recovered for environmental purposes under the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. It is interesting to note that in 2021, the total Australian urban consumption of water was a touch over 1,800 gigalitres. That puts the figures in context. We support the basic concept of the plan, as without a healthy river system, communities will not survive. However, we have measured the economic impact of the plans implemented since 2012, and we found that the impact is at least 10 times that of the closure of the coal-fired power stations in the Latrobe Valley, and it is estimated to be close to $1 billion annually to our region, plus the loss of thousands of jobs. The plan is having enormous impacts on the livelihood of farmers and industry in our region, with very little economic support packages that other regions such as the Latrobe Valley receive. In December of 2018, the Ministerial Council, which includes all basin state ministers, agreed to refine the neutrality test and criteria to include no negative third-party impacts, no irrigation system impacts, no water impacts, and no local community impacts. The cost of buying an additional 750 gigalitres of environmental water is calculated to be near $6 billion. However, the infrastructure required to efficiently distribute that quantity of water has not been developed, resulting in that water remaining in storage or simply sent out to sea to relieve storage capacity. That is why we agree with the Minister to advocate more time to complete the plan in order that infrastructure works and measures can be completed. More worrying to us is the effect that the overstorage of water in Eildon and Hume dams puts communities such as Shepparton, Echuca, Mildura and Albury under enormous threat of flood, inundation and crop destruction. Victoria has already delivered the $2 billion irrigation modernisation program that has seen irrigation efficiencies using modern technology, increased farm production, additional water savings allocated to the environment, and the ability of Melbourne to receive water from the Goulburn River in times of emergency. We note that together with the earlier water recovery programs, approximately 30% of all water previously used for irrigation is now owned by the environment. Furthermore, water savings coming out of the Goulburn and Murray rivers and their tributaries are assisting in the provision of urban waters in cities such as Ballarat, Broken Hill, Port Perry, and as far west as Ceduna and Port Lincoln. Under current settings, the only way to harness the additional environmental water is via buybacks. The negative effects of this process within the Goulburn and Murray Irrigation District include undermining the current investment in infrastructure upgrades to our irrigation district. If we take more irrigation water out of the Goulburn Murray Irrigation District, the cost of all that infrastructure and benefit of efficient water distribution will both be lost. 2, operating irrigation regions will become less viable. There must be viable food and fibre production regimes to take advantage of the storage and efficient delivery of water, which we have got. The Goulburn Valley is the food bowl of Australia, and that will be destroyed by any reduction of irrigation availability. Our well-deserved reputation could be lost. Again, the purchase price of permanent water by legitimate users will be elevated, as governments have the reputation operating in an open chequebook mentality when it comes to achieving financial targets. The open market by both irrigators and investors will react accordingly. Finally, the proposed $6 billion in buyback costs are not budgeted for and are proposed at a time when taxpayers, home buyers and struggling families are requested to further tighten their personal belts. A recent meeting of regional advocacy groups from Victoria and New South Wales agreed to adopt a non-negotiable position in respect to any discussions with the federal government and the MDBA, and they include: communities cannot tolerate any further reduction in the consumptive pool needed to produce critical food and fibre for the community. Lastly, our communities cannot tolerate any further destruction of our social and economic viability. It is vitally important that the principle of agreed neutrality test must apply to all recovery processes. It is critical that the federal ALP party room has a broadly informed view of these matters which threaten to cause significant social and economic damage to Victorian communities. A meeting has been requested with Minister Shepparton, who is a Victorian-based federal member, to discuss the implementation of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, now in its final and most difficult and complex stage, noting that the Victorian State Water Minister has a full understanding of the outcomes of any potential buybacks. While welcoming an extension to the deadline for completion of infrastructure works and measures integral to the Basin Plan, our council is alarmed by the prospect of future buybacks from within the Goulburn Valley. The Goulburn Murray Irrigation District has done more than its share of heavy lifting in reaching its environmental sustainable targets, and we strongly encourage the Minister to source water to meet its targets of additional water for the environment from sources other than the Goulburn Murray Irrigation District. And I now seek councillor support for this notice of motion.
Very good, Councillor Dobson. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Councillor Dobson. Can I say that certainly the Murray-Darling Basin Plan has really, we've been talking about this for nearly 20 years, and it's probably about 17, 18 years ago that it was actually introduced, the plan, and what it would come out as with Minister Turnbull, who was in government at the time as the Water Minister. It's complicated, and it has 6 different jurisdictions that are involved with competing interests, and so you've got not only different political parties involved, you've got different states involved and territories, but you've also got corporates, and you've got farming communities, and you've got the environmental needs. So it really is a very, very tough balance. I think where the rubber hits the road is the socio-economic neutrality test. That's where it underpins this underlying trigger. And so I compliment Councillor Dobson in putting that forward, and certainly not only Councillor Dobson, but the council in general, who's been steadfast on this particular topic and the direction we've taken for many years now.
Very good, Councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Councillor Spinks.
I'm neither speaking for nor against this motion, because the conversation is just more nuanced than that. It can't just be for or against. I'm not sure if I'll support this, but I want to tell you why that is. Over the past 3 or so weeks, I've undergone a pretty strong personal research journey of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, which, for a plan that's existed for 20 years, 3 weeks does not do it justice, but I have done my very best. And while I could find endless documents talking to the social and economic impacts of the plan, of water use and of buybacks, I was hard-pressed to find much narrative prioritising the environmental impacts. Not that it doesn't exist. It was very clear that a lack of water to our wetlands would have devastating impacts to our flora and fauna and natural environments, but I could not find what the impacts of that devastation would be. While it has clearly been discussed from all angles what the social and economical impacts would be to our farmers, our industries and our communities, of which are all very valid and inarguably important, and I'm not here today to say that they aren't, but I kept coming back to the question of, if the environment does not get the water it needs, an amount that I understand was already compromised at initial design of the Basin Plan, then what are the consequences to the environment, and what are the social and economical what are the social and economical consequences of that? This is as complex a conversation as it gets. Humans need food to eat, farmers need water to grow, the environment needs water to exist, humans and farmers need a stable and healthy environment, and we all need each other and we all need water. Water is the epitome of the tragedy of the commons concept, which refers to a situation in which individuals with access to a public resource act in their own interest and in doing so ultimately deplete the resource. And from what I understand, between the conflicting states and industry and water rights and needs and an unfactored, rapidly changing climate and reducing water sources, that is exactly what is happening here. Everyone thinks they are right and that they are the most important, but no single person or region or crop can possibly be the priority or the solution. And if I had been asked to enter into a debate about advocating for one at the expense of the other, which unfortunately from the way that it's been spoken about, I do feel like I'm being asked to do, I would not have been able to participate. Because if everyone's idea is that the water can't come from us, then where does the water come from? It's not from my backyard for water. Some say we have the most and we've already given enough, and others say we don't have enough so we can't give any. And if every council is having this exact same conversation saying that it can't come from us, then where does the water come from? Everyone's reason individually is completely justified, But collectively, it all comes back to the question I started with. If the environment does not get the water it needs, then what are the consequences to the environment and what are the consequences to us? I wanted to share this research journey that I've been on because as our world is literally burning and flooding at the same time and the ice caps are melting and the ocean is a hot tub and we have entered the era of climate boiling, it feels imperative that I highlight that question I keep coming back to. Because if we don't start adding the environment to the social and economics, then freedom in a common brings ruin to all. So today, Councillor Dobson, for your notice of motion, I support how passionately you fight for this issue, and I do support the intention to work with the relevant ministers and bodies to advocate for our region and to continue the work that you are doing. But I ask also that on your travels, you find the answer to my question, because we should all want to know. I'm not sure if I'll support it today, but it's not for supporting or not supporting, is that I do not have the answer I need. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Spinks. Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. Well, I think I've had two really informative points of view here, Councillor Dobson's and obviously Councillor Spinks, and I get your position 100%. This has always been about a balancing act from day one, trying to address the concerns of irrigators, obviously, because especially for our area, irrigation is the backbone of our economy. No economy, no people, no life, no environment, or well, there might be an environment, we won't be there to enjoy it. But having said that, obviously the environment's important, not for the next 20 years, but for 50 and 100 years. So decisions we make today will affect what this place looks like naturally over the next 100 or so years. So many things regarding, and Jeff probably knows all this, salt issues with water running down the rivers, erosion of the banks with too much environmental water, all that sort of stuff. I'm a little bit cynical about this whole subject, actually. This has been going on for many years, and we keep kicking that can down the road, as does the federal government as well, and all the state governments. And we're extending the period, and I can see you're asking for an extension, and I think we'll get that, because there is no resolution right now. They haven't got that water. I think the only thing we can hope for is that somehow technology will save us at the end of the day with some sort of a system or better systems that will save more water, and the irrigators can possibly use that. At this stage, I think they've used up all their possible alternatives to save more water. So, yeah, it's a difficult one, but I do support it. You're delivering the same message that's been relentless and strong for many, many years. Keep doing that. I don't think we'll get everything we want ultimately. Everything's a compromise. Let's just hope that compromise works out in a fair way for all.
Thanks, Councillor Adam. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Mayor Sally. It's an absolute obvious thing that water is crucial for this region and every other region. As Councillor Adams said, farmers are the backbone of our local economy. Water is the backbone. When farmers are successful, this flows on to almost every other local industry and individual. Council does not manage water though. We do not traditionally work in the space of water. But the ongoing battle between economic impacts and environmental flows does necessitate our support one way or the other. From my own research, and correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm sure you will, it does seem that water flow was largely unmanaged right up until the 1970s, when the water system was becoming very polluted, unsustainable, and something had to change. So the government stepped in and invested billions into this Murray-Darling Basin plant, which has been fraught by obstacles ever since. 450 gigalitres was promised to South Australia when Independent Senator Nick Xenophon was in power. And at the time, we joked independents get whatever they want, and wealthy South Australian properties could have a waterside view based on this deal, which may not have been far off the mark at the time, but this 450 gigalitre persists regardless. As far as environmental benefit, we have a lot of work to do. The system will not function effectively without improved environmental infrastructure, and we just need a better understanding of the river's ecosystem in order to avoid further damage, which we do not have. We have not been here long enough to assess the rhythms. Former Mayor Councillor Patterson often spoke about high water flows being driven downstream during dry periods, and that could disrupt the breeding habitat of the endangered platypus, because the water would get into their burrows and kill the eggs. So local Indigenous knowledge may be crucial in achieving some balanced aims, not just about money, not just about virtue signalling. It is about getting that river healthy so that everyone can benefit. They are the original experts and custodians, and potentially that could necessitate another notice of motion or recommendation down the track. But anything that puts a spotlight on the importance of water sustainability will likely get my support. So I congratulate Councillor Dobson on his notice of motion, and I wish the council every success in their deliberations, and I hope we don't drop the ball in fighting for the environment as well as our financial stability.
Great.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to the motion? No? Before I go to Councillor Dobson's closing comments, I'll just sort of add on to what's already been said, and I don't want to take too much away, Councillor Dobson, from what you've said, but I also have to acknowledge what Councillor Spinks has said, which is that balancing act that we're here to try and work through as well. But, you know, that's that sort of element of unknown as to what happens from these decisions as well. But I do have to acknowledge and appreciate the time Minister Plibersek gave both Peter and I, and I think that was a great opportunity to sit down with the relevant minister and share, I guess, some small part of what she already knows, which she's well across it in regards, and whether it's right or wrong, that's what effectively what we're advocating for. We're advocating for what we believe is the best outcome for our region, and that's what we're focused on as well. So there is a balancing component to it as well. We appreciate the opportunity that Minister Plibersek has given us, and we'll continue those strong relationships with her moving forward as well. That's an important part of it as well. The Food Bowl of Australia, and if we take the water away, and as I mentioned to Minister Plibersek while we were there, agriculture is impacted, dairy is impacted, and the most vulnerable are impacted when you take water away, because things skyrocket on the shelf in the supermarket. So that's what it all will come back down to. We'll continue our strong advocacy, heavily led by Councillor Dobson here as well. We'll get behind him and ensure that the message is very strong and clear to get the best possible outcome for our region. So any closing comments, Councillor Dobson?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Sarley. Look, I just want to reiterate again the significance of the meeting between the Minister and yourselves. And that meeting should not be underestimated by this community. I mean, that's what we're here for, to advocate. It demonstrates that the Minister is willing to hear from local communities via council representatives. And I think that's where we, you know, there's no politics involved in this. This is just our community talking directly with the Minister on the significant impacts that buybacks would mean, which is the theme that our water leadership group of the GMID, through co-chairs Susanna Sheed and David McKenzie, have been highlighting for some time. For our team to participate one-on-one with the Minister in short notice also demonstrates the significance of local government in the national water debate, and the Mayor and CEO are to be congratulated on their initiative. And I've got to say that along with all the other things that this council's got to do, social implications, what have you, I believe that water is one of the most important, how we deal with water is one of the most important issues that we've got, and it's our obligation on behalf of our community to deal with it. There is solutions, and one of them, to Councillor Spinks, I agree with what you say, but what you do is you don't ask for more water. What you do is put the water you've got over better infrastructure, more efficiently used, as has been demonstrated in the GMID. We've put about 102 odd gigs of water back through to the environment on the back of infrastructure upgrades through here, the $2 billion. So we're in agreement, but it's the way, the practicality of the whole thing to get our results. There is some solutions. The MDBA have analysed the significance of the Barmah Choke, for example, in its constrictions of water flows downstream due to the sand sludge from Yarrawonga to Barmah. It is, and I've been part of those discussions. It is now time to spend environmental monies on dredging the river and releasing the held back water, so that water can flow down unimpeded. In partnership with this plan, the Mulwala Canal should also be upgraded to deliver environmental water downstream of the choke, as the canal is not presently operating to capacity. And I've done a bit of work around that too, and that's a very strong point that's been made by the MIA. More water transfers could be achieved by linking the northern Victorian channel system from Yarrawonga to the Murray downstream from the choke using the Broken Creek. In the last 10 years, the Victorian government has spent $2 billion in modernising and creating efficiencies in the GMID to allow water to be transferred to the environment, as well as developing a pipeline to Melbourne for use in the emergencies. So where else does this water come from? We've only got a finite amount of water. Well, here's the rub. It is time that the New South Wales state government, in partnership with the federal government, created efficiencies in the northern basin and the Murray-Darling Basin. Only of recent times has the New South Wales government...
Yeah, much longer?
Can I start just one more minute?
No, I can't give you the 1 minute.
It's your last line.
Wrap it up, Dobber.
Okay.
Up for us, mate.
So what we're saying,
Councillor Dobson.
it is time that the New South Wales government,
Thought we were in briefings.
the New South Wales state government got onto floodplain harvesting, which is the biggest waste, and the mega dams, and the decommissioning of those dams, and reducing the water that goes through the flood. I could go on for years. These are suggestions that are not new. All we need is for Minister Plibersek to continue to explore the options rather than buying more water from the GMID.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Councillors, without further ado, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Voting? Very good. Abstain. That'll be counted as no. Councillors, motion carried. We now go to page 76 of the agenda, item 16.2. Notice of motion 12/2023, Lemnos commemorative structure. Councillors, there is a recommendation. Can I please have someone put that forward as a motion?
Why not? I think I'll move that motion, Mr Mayor. I move the motion, Mayor, so the council request that officers provide a report to council by October 2023 containing estimated costs of designing and erecting a memorial structure in the locality of Lemnos. Information contained within the report will outline and acknowledge the relevance of the Lemnos name and its historical link to the Gallipoli campaign, with special focus on the sacrifices of the female nurses based on the island of Lemnos during World War I to be included within the memorial. Point 2 is engage with the local Lemnos community with a view to assisting the establishment of a formal community group that can advocate for the interests and aspirations of the Lemnos community.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Can I have a councillor second that motion, please? Councillor Brophy.
I second that motion.
Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor Sarley. Let's hope I can come in under 6 minutes on this. I'll first begin with some basic facts about the locality of Lemnos. Lemnos was named after the Greek island in the Aegean Sea, to which Australian soldiers were evacuated after the Gallipoli campaign in World War I. Major Ernest Purcell Hill, a decorated soldier himself, and later a Shepparton Shire councillor, proposed a name in the early 20s, which consequently was adopted around the same time. He personally spent about 3 weeks on Lemnos as a casualty of the war, and was also one of, if not the first soldier settler in his locality, meaning Lemnos. Whilst the heroics and sacrifices of the Anzacs during the Gallipoli campaign is well documented, as it rightly should be, the sacrifices and heroics of the non-combatant nurses and doctors who witnessed the effects of the relentless carnage on an hour-by-hour basis has not been publicly acknowledged and remembered locally with respect and gratitude I believe it deserves. Whilst there have been some recognition in recent years in Canberra and other places that you may not expect, I'll refer to them later, I believe we in Greater Shepparton have a duty and a responsibility to honour the name we adopted around 100 years ago. My proposal is not just to add another memorial to the 4,000 or 5,000 war memorials that currently exist in Australia, or to romanticise and glorify war, rather to relate the humanity and inevitably and ironically shares the same path as the cruelty of war. Lemnos was not a battlefield in the common sense, but a battlefield it most certainly was. Caring for broken bodies and broken minds on a continual basis required courage and heroism equal to the courage of the soldiers themselves. The hospital conditions that these nurses operated under have been described in many personal diaries and in newspapers of the time as primitive and horrible. However, in spite of these challenges, they delivered care and support with a sense of duty second to none. The name Lemnos was proposed by Major Hill for a reason. It held special significance to him, and from all reports to almost every other Australian serviceman that fought in the Gallipoli campaign. Between 50 and 100,000 troops At some point, transited Lemnos due to it being a staging point for the proposed landings and later the main hospital base caring for casualties brought back from the front lines of Gallipoli. As we all know, time restricts me now from detailing all the stories of soldiers and medical staff who served or spent time on the island, but suffice to say, they are all inexorably linked to the Gallipoli campaign. During my research on Lemnos, a couple of paragraphs from an article titled Australia and Lemnos in the Great War, written by Australian historian Professor Peter Stanley, resonated greatly and strengthened my resolve to pursue this initiative. The paragraphs are as follows, quote, "Today there is little popular memory of Lemnos in Australia. Australians largely do not know about the brief encounter with the small island and its people in 1915. Australian newspapers made very few references to Lemnos until in 1915 the numbers soared. 63 mentions in 1914, but over 5,000 in 1915. By 1919, though, the number fell again to 500, still 10 times the annual figure before the war. The relationship between Lemnos and Australia has been commemorated in recent years, especially during the Great War centenary. There have been various exhibitions, statues, memorials and books, and all have helped to develop knowledge of the historical relationship. Lemnians who sponsor conferences and books to celebrate the wartime relationship with Australia feel frustrated that most Australians, even those interested in Gallipoli, know very little about Lemnos and that few ever visit. They almost invariably approach Gallipoli from Istanbul. Sadly, Lemnos attracts only those with a direct personal connection or those with a special interest," end quote. Since that article was published, I was pleased to report that the Australian government, working alongside the government of Greece, have committed $4.9 million to developing and completing an historical project titled the Lemnos Remembrance Trail. Australian Governor General David Hurley, on his first official visit to Greece, together with Greek President Katerina Sakellaropoulou, turned the first sod of this project in early May of this year. For Linda Hurley, the Governor General's wife, the visit was very special, as her great uncle had spent time on Lemnos as an Anzac soldier in 1915. This commemorative trail is set for completion in April 2024 and will make available several key sites for public access and is set to become a major component of the Anzac legend. Again, while researching this motion, I was astounded at the amount of publications and references that existed about Lemnos and its crucial role in the Gallipoli campaign. Having said that, I must mention one person amongst many that I only happened to have the pleasure to speak with last night. Elizabeth Kados is an Australian descendant from the island of Lemnos, a major driving force behind the Australian government's decision to launch the Lemnos Remembrance Trail initiative. She, along with volunteer colleagues, are producing a 1-hour documentary about the Lemnos story, scheduled for release on SBS in November this year. Apart from the fundamental Anzac link, the documentary describes the support and kindness offered to our nurses and servicemen by the local Greek Lemnos inhabitants. Their crucial assistance to our troops and medicos cannot be understated and must also be told and acknowledged. I'm certain our local Greek Australian community members would take pride in their ancestors' humane actions in support of Australian doctors, nurses and troops alike. After our conversation, she was committed. I can finish this off in my closing comments if you like.
No, if you got a bit more.
It's about, no, I think I'll finish it off in my closing comments.
You got that much more?
Oh, not that much, about a minute. If you're happy with a minute, I can go a minute.
It's more than a minute.
20 seconds, do you want to close it out?
In a minute.
Yeah, right, very good. Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I won't use 6 minutes, but thank you anyway. Well done, Councillor Adam. I think this is a very good notice of motion put forward and probably long overdue in regards to that. Lemnos, of course, the ancient Greeks, the island sacred for...
Jason and the Argonauts, right?
For
Amazon.
Hephaestus. Hephaestus is the god of metallurgy. And of course, I suppose it's ironic in the sense that so many soldiers came with shrapnel wounds back there to that particular island. But in terms of the actual synonymous with World War I, and as Councillor Dem put out very, very strongly there, that, I mean, one of 3 war cemeteries that are actually located on the island is one for Anzacs. 224 Australian and New Zealand soldiers are buried there. What I really liked out of the notice of motion, though, that you've really alluded to there, was the fact of a special focus on the sacrifices of the female nurses based on the island. Just coincidentally, a recently unveiled statue at the Australian War Memorial to one of my heroes, which is Lieutenant Colonel Vivian Bullwinkle. Now, that was World War II, and it was a horrendous story for any of those who know the story of that. But again, recognising, and again, late, but recognising all the services that the nurses did, particularly on that island, but across all our wars and conflicts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Are there any councillors that would like to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? No, very good. Before I go to Councillor Adam for closing comments, I think it's great recognition that you want to offer, and I know you've spoken about this passionately, and I did share with you the Governor-General, which it was only just fitting not long after that we were speaking, and it was a coincidence, and we shared that, so brought more recognition to what you're obviously wanting to do, and I think it's worthwhile that we pursue it as well. So look forward to the additional information coming back, I think in October, that you're requesting that, so good on you for putting this forward, because I know you've been speaking about it for a little while as well. Did you have any closing comments?
I certainly do. Yeah, look, thank you for the support. I just want to add a few important points here. As I said earlier, I'm certain our local Greek Australian community members will take pride in their ancestors' humane actions in support of Australian doctors and nurses and troops alike. After speaking with this lady, Elizabeth, she committed to me that she would actually reference our Lemnos. When I say our Lemnos, Lemnos of Shepparton, in this documentary. And she also she was aware that Lemnos existed in Shepparton, but never visited here. And that sort of highlighted to me the fact that, you know, this has to be rectified. So I look forward to Liz actually working closely with council officers as an invaluable resource if this project can be realised. And as I mentioned earlier, as an example of current memorials to Lemnos that may not have been expected, in 2017, the City of Port Phillip renamed a public space in Albert Park as Lemnos Square. Its sculptures depicting nurses and wounded soldiers was erected in 2015 by the Lemnos Gallipoli Commemorative Committee that hosts an annual Lemnos Gallipoli commemorative service each August, like right now. This motion today is also asking council to provide a report outlining possible designs, costs associated with these designs, and exploring opportunities that do exist locally, statewide, or federally. This motion also calls for council to engage with the local Lemnos community with a view to forming a community group who can speak directly to council on community aspirations and allow them to have a voice and contribute their opinions on proposals such as I've just outlined. Our Lemnos is a growing community, a mix of farming, industrial and transport industry operations that are set to only increase. For these reasons, I encourage local residents and businesses to have their say in its future via a formal community group. In finishing off, councillors, the name Lemnos was special, even sacred in the hearts and minds of soldiers, of our nurses, of the survivors and all their families to this day. The name was specifically chosen for its significance, if not only the Gallipoli story, but for its significance to the Australian story. I believe we have an obligation to fulfil Major Hill's legacy by completing the story he began over 100 years ago. The very least we can do is to tell this story in the one and only locality in Australia that was named in honour of and to honour that name and the life-changing experiences it represents. Thank you for listening.
Very good. Councillor Adam, well done. Councillors, we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, item 17, urgent business not included on the agenda, nil received. I don't think there's any urgent business that needs to be addressed. No. Before we close the meeting, we will take this opportunity to congratulate the Matildas to date, because we have definitely taken ownership of Courtney Vine, and we wish you, Courtney, all the very best tomorrow night in the semi-final. Please, if you can, get down to the multi-purpose pavilion. Kickoff is at 8 p.m. and the gate opens, I think, at 6:30 p.m. Is that right? Very good. Go the Tillies, and we will officially close the meeting at 5:23 p.m. Very good.